how many wholesalers, what our customer or direct to customer sales will look like, what customized orders we're going to take on. So even if you were to get an inquiry from a business that's like, you know, an insanely big order that's going to take your revenue, you know, increase your revenue by like $500,000, you just don't have the internal systems and the internal setups ready to be able to take that on.
Do you notice in the product businesses that you work with that, you know, do some of them do volume play successfully? You know, because there's, from my perspective, you know, with small businesses that are self-funding, I believe it's a lot easier to do more of a premium play, luxury play, less inventory or less SKUs, versus a volume play. A volume play, you're counting on, you know, volume, like a huge audience that you may not have. And if you're pricing your products really low and the margins are low, then you're doing a volume play. So what's your take on that? Do you have any experience to share about that?
I think that definitely makes sense from a financial point of view, because when you're small and you're just starting out, you just don't have the capacity to be launching like 50 different SKUs. So focusing on a few kind of key champion products makes a lot of sense, and focusing on marketing positioning and increase margin, like that really luxury positioning really early on. I mean, I almost feel like that's the only way you can really go in today's market, because the businesses that are at the lower end, pricing wise, they're all able to just generate such a low cost of goods sold through scale.
Yes,
like they have warehouses, they have, you know, their cost of goods margin is like insanely low. It's like 10% or 13% or something. And for most businesses, like small business, when you're starting out, you just can't achieve that.
Right.
You could potentially have a goal of having a higher margin now, like having the product cost more, but with a goal to scale to work on lowering that cost of goods sold over time. But again, that's a really hard transition to make. I think what you're talking about makes a lot more sense in terms of the landscape, just really focusing on that brand awareness, that brand loyalty, getting those like champion customers in really early on, and scaling through that. That's where we see the majority of businesses taking on in terms of a strategy.
Yes, absolutely. Although, yeah, I mean, if you have, I think like if you have the financial backing, maybe if you have seed funding or VC funding, or you happen to have a huge audience already built in, then it would be much easier to do like a volume play where maybe you're selling at a more accessible price point because you have just more people to sell that to, which, you know, you're making up the lower margins on the volume.
Yeah, exactly. Those are all, important considerations as well.
So tell me, like, how do you approach financial forecasting for a beauty brand, and what factors do you think are most overlooked by founders in forecasting?
Yeah, okay, good question. When I start working with a business owner, I always like to start with what are their goals? Just no other kind of leads or ideas, but just what are your goals for your business? Why are you doing what you're doing, and what do you want to achieve out of it? And that's kind of like throwing spaghetti at the wall and kind of where we're going to land up. I don't know, and you know, it takes a bit to just let's come up with somewhere. There's something in the back of your mind that you want to do with your business. Let's just get there, even if it's just completely random and, you know, out of nowhere. So that's how I usually like to start. And sometimes I can get some really insightful answers. I can get some, we really want to sell the business. I really want to get it to a level when it's really ready to sell. Or this is my ideal revenue number. I want to touch this many people's lives with my product. This is like, I just want to expand. I want as many people as possible to have access to this amazing thing that I'm creating. there's multiple, or, as an owner salary, this is how much I want to take. There's so many different answers that I can get to that question, but that's usually the starting point, and that can give me kind of somewhere to go. So from there, we're just going to fill in the detail of bringing that vision alive, no matter how unrealistic it is at the start. We're just putting together a plan. It might be, okay, maybe they just started their business and it's doing, 6 figures, and the goal is I want to make 7 figures in net income. And so we're just pulling in the data to be able to match that picture. And we're like, okay, so this is the one-time eventual dream goal of the business, and this is what you did last year. And then we're just filling in the middle pieces of that. So we're probably not going from like 100,000 in revenue to 5 million in revenue in the space of a year, but what feels like an achievable next step in getting towards there, and working through those previous calculations with cost of goods sold margin and operational expenses. Sorry, I'm not sure if you can hear that. That's my son knocking at the door. Working from home parents. He's with my husband, but he's gotten away.
He knows where mommy is.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Okay, so let's see. We were Hector. Kevin, can we just trim this part a little bit? Where were we? You were just what did you just say? Because I have a follow-up question.
I was just talking about that, throwing spaghetti at the air, thinking of the big picture goals, and then filling in the details and the gaps.
Yes. Okay, so have you ever had a situation where, like, okay, you make a projection and then the business overshot by like 5 times or 10 times?
Oh, interesting. It's not common. I definitely have situations where business owners, it's interesting because when we kind of come up with these budgets and these goals, typically probably 90% of the time, they're either kind of achieving like that healthy 20-30% growth that we set out to achieve, or they're achieving they're achieving the budget that we set down, or they're exceeding the budget that we set down. That's typically where we sit. So I don't often see businesses. I'm even trying to think of an example. I just had a case. This was not in the beauty industry, but a business owner that did just go from like 500,000 in revenue, I think, to over $1 million. So they grew 50%. And there were really specific situations that kind of led to that growth, which I just don't think is repeatable for businesses outside of that specific situation. Right. Yeah, in answer to your strategy, in your question, I don't think we just don't see that, because when we're planning for a certain level of revenue, all the steps that we're taking are based on achieving that. Like what we're ordering, how many wholesalers, what our customer or direct to customer sales will look like, what customized orders we're going to take on. So even if you were to get an inquiry from a business that's like, an insanely big order that's going to take your revenue, increase your revenue by like $500,000, you just don't have the internal systems and the internal setups ready to be able to take that on.
For sure.
So that's why I think always forecasting like a healthy level of growth is really important.